Okay, well, we're logging into YouTube and just be a second. So in the meantime, we'll fire away with the roll call. So for the Camarillo Airport Authority, okay, well, we're logging into YouTube and just be a second. Sorry, had to mute that. Supervisor Long.
Here.
And a Vice Mayor Santangelo.
I'm here.
And Vice Chair Scott Bear.
Here.
Okay, and I will call as an alternate Supervisor Huber. Not yet. And
Looks like Sean's.
Camarillo Mayor Sean Mulche.
I'm here.
Okay, great. Welcome aboard. And let me see if we have alternate public member Sonata or alternate council member.
He will be joining us.
Kildee. Okay. So note of that. Oxnard Airport Authority Supervisor Long.
Here.
Hello. And then Councilmember Perrello.
Here.
Evening. Councilmember Lopez, Chair.
Here.
And Vice Chair Eugene Fussell.
You're muted, Eugene.
Well, I see him. I marked him present.
Here.
Okay.
Awesome.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks. All right. So we are ready to do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance
allegiance
to
to
the
the
flag
flag of the United States of America,
and to the
to the
republic
republic
for
for
which
which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good.
All right, so that brings us down to agenda review. A couple of things. The first is that we would like to adjourn tonight's meeting in the memory of Carmen Ramirez. I think by now we all know what has happened and are still, I know I'm still dealing with the loss. She was a colleague, but she was also a friend of mine, and she's dearly missed. Vianney, did you want to say something as well?
Thank you, Chair Santangelo, and I too join in asking that the authorities adjourn in memory of Supervisor Ramirez as we remember her presence and her impact to many of us in the community as a leader, as a friend, as a mentor, and in many ways the work and legacy that she leaves behind through each of us. So thank you for initiating this. And I do understand there is one more person that we would like to adjourn in memory of. So I will pass it on to Councilmember Perrello.
Thank you very much, Chair Lopez. I would like to also add Sarah Wan. I've sent the story in the LA Times about this tremendous woman who recently passed, and I've asked the director to share it with all the board members. Sarah Wan was a person that schooled Carmen Ramirez in environmental issues, a tremendous amount of people. There's no one in the up and down the state of California, in my opinion, more influential on looking out for coastal areas. And I understand Camarillo is not right on the coast, but I consider Camarillo a coastal community. And I do not want to pass the opportunity to recognize this woman, a giant who did not seek publicity and did not receive much. But if you read what she accomplished in her life and all those that she taught, because she had a motto, she didn't tell people what to do, she taught them what to do. Carmen was one of but many who schooled at her home in Malibu when the opportunities came to learn how to do things that improved our community. So I hope we can also add Ms. Sarah Wan's name. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Lopez.
Okay, well, I think we should add Ms. Wan to who we will adjourn in the memory of. And I see we have some hands up. Let's see, Mr. Huber, I think you were first.
Yes, thank you. So many wonderful things have already been said about our colleague Supervisor Carmen Ramirez, but I must express my true admiration and good fortune for knowing and working with her over the years in many different capacities. Regardless of our contact in our elected positions, in our law practices or community events, it was always a true professional filled with enthusiasm and kindness towards me and everyone she served. Her legacy will never be forgotten. Thank you.
Supervisor Long.
Thank you very much, Susan. I really appreciate adjourning in memory of Carmen Ramirez, especially today. It has been very hard for our whole community, and she was such a great leader, civic leader, just embraced so many, not only in Ventura County, but throughout the state and nation. So I really do appreciate it. I definitely agree about the shock of that and just what happened. But really appreciate just taking a moment to remember her and adjourn in memory of her, and that her legacy will live on, which is wonderful to know. So thank you.
Thank you. I think we are all still grappling with it. And the one thing that I have learned since her passing is I always knew she influenced many lives, but how many lives she influenced has just, every day I learn of more people that she knew and lives she touched and impacted. And it just speaks volumes about her work. Okay. Moving on, we had.
Chair, if I may, I think you also had an agenda item you wanted to adjust.
We did. If we could move item J up until after item E, then that way we take care of all the Camarillo business
Okay,
at the front end of the meeting.
we can do that.
Okay, and are there any, and does anybody else have any adjustments or changes to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we can move on to approval of minutes. So do I have a motion from Camarillo?
I'll motion to approve. Long.
I'll second.
Okay. Let's do a roll call vote.
All right, for the approval of the minutes, Camarillo Airport Authority, Supervisor Long.
Yes.
And I will just fold Supervisor Huber in as a member rather than calling him out as an alternate. So Supervisor Huber.
I abstain because I wasn't there at the meeting.
Absolutely, got you there. Mayor Molche,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Santangelo,
Yes.
Scott Bear.
Yes,
All right, and that motion passes 4 yes and 1 abstention.
Chair Lopez?
Thank you. For Oxnard, members, if there's any changes, amendments or anything to the minutes of the meeting, otherwise I can entertain a motion.
So moved, Perot.
Second, Long.
Thank you. And can we have a roll call vote, please?
You bet. For the Oxnard Airport Authority, Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Huber,
Abstain.
of course. Councilmember Perillo,
Yes.
Councilmember and Chair Lopez,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Fussell.
Abstain, I was absent.
Very good. Okay, that motion passes 3 yeas and 2 abstentions. I think it passes. Yeah, it does. Okay.
Okay, that moves us on to public comments.
Okay, we do have 4 written comments, and I'll bet there'll be some folks that raise their hands among the attendees. I see 2 so far. So would you like to hear the written ones first?
Yes, please.
Okay. So this comment is from Robin Munson. And this person writes, to whom this may concern, I'm a resident of the Seabridge development in Oxnard. My husband and I have lived here 10 years. And for at least 9 of them, we have been trying to get someone to take our complaints seriously about the seemingly constant noise of touch and goes as they fly over our homes, often at low altitudes. These flyovers potentially pose a threat to our health and safety, in addition to being annoying and inconvenient. If left unchecked, they could affect our home values as well. I understand that the Oxnard Airport does not charge these small planes for taking off from our airport, unlike other municipal airports in Southern California. And I can't understand why the resultant loss of revenue is considered acceptable to our city. Please take action to rectify this problem. And that's the end of the comment from Robin Munson. The next comment is from Nanette Meister, resident of Oxnard Shores. And Nanette writes, the constant touch and go flight patterns out of Oxnard Airport are a complete and absolute disruption in the quality of life in our neighborhood. The airport authority has put in place a quote, recommended flight pattern, unquote, which avoids our home completely, but without punishments, the pilots ignore the recommendations. There presently is a few planes flying over my home right now without consideration or respect for us, the homeowners. The recommended patterns must be enforced. Thank you, Nanette Meister. And that concludes that person's comment. Next comment is from Joe Gosland. And he writes, my name is Joe Gosland, resident of Oxnard Shores. Once again, I am bringing up the issue about the potential of lead poisoning that is more than likely occurring in the neighborhood, communities, and schools surrounding the Oxnard Airport. The airport authority needs to take this issue more seriously, as we potentially have a county health issue occurring on your watch. Tuesday night at the Oxnard City Council meeting, the mayor and several other council members finally took notice and asked for additional information to review. I again remind you of the recently concluded 10-year scientific study in Santa Clara, California, that found that children living near the Reed Hillview Airport are experiencing lead poisoning. In some cases, blood levels were found to be higher than what was seen in children during the Flint, Michigan water crisis. There are 5 schools within 1.5 miles of the Oxnard Airport. These schools are being overflown by hundreds of flights each month by smaller, older, lead-fueled airplanes using Oxnard Airport for touch and go trainings. These children are in danger of lead poisoning. I ask that you coordinate with the city and the county and city of Oxnard to consider at a minimum involving the EPA in testing for heavy metals, especially lead, in the children attending these schools, and that touch and go landings be suspended immediately until the appropriate tests can be conducted. Our children's health depends on it. Per the CDC, there is no safe blood lead levels in children at all. And that concludes the comment from Joe Gosland. And then I have the last written comment from Rita Weingarten. And Rita writes, good evening, my name is Rita Weingarten. As a homeowner and concerned resident of the excessive noise and safety issues that we're experiencing from touch and go training exercises out of Oxnard Airport, I'd like to take this opportunity to reiterate what we said at the last City Council meeting on September 6th, 2022. Quote, we have no interest, nor have we had any discussion in closing the Oxnard Airport, unquote. Quote, what we were trying to do is communicate that some neighborhoods are being greatly impacted by excessive and unhealthy noise and safety concerns, unquote. As a member of the Oxnard Fly Friendly group, we are trying to come up with a viable plan for all pilots and all flying schools to be good neighbors and not fly over our homes. As a 27-year Ventura County homeowner and a huge supporter of SOAR, I'm aware of our huge amount of open space, agricultural fields, and one big Pacific Ocean. It seems there must be numerous options for pilots to find other areas to conduct their training other than flying low and very loud over Oxnard shores, Oxnard dunes, Westport, and surrounding neighborhoods. It's very clear that some neighborhoods do not experience what we are experiencing. The 1998 noise abatement study, if followed, has great suggestions so that people can live in peace and feel safe in their homes and backyards while the Oxnard Airport remains a part of our community. Thank you, Rita. And that concludes the comment from Rita Weingarten. And if I can lay my hands on the readout for comments. So if you wish to make a public comment on agenda item number 5, please press the raise hand button, or if you were calling in, press star then 9 to be added to the speaker queue when prompted by the chair of the commission. So with that being read, I will turn to Ben Di Benedetto and bring him into the meeting. He can show his image if he likes and come off mute. And you have 3 minutes. Joe, you're on, or Ben, I'm sorry, you're on mute if you can hear me.
Let's try it again. First, I want to take just a few seconds and thank you so much for your moving tribute, individual tributes to Carmen Ramirez. Her loss is devastating, and I know you're feeling it, and we're feeling it as well. So that being said, several weeks ago, we requested, Walt Hageman, chair of the neighborhood council in Oxnard Shores, and then some weeks afterwards, I had requested a copy of the 1998 150 noise abatement study that was conducted at Oxnard Airport. And that was not available anywhere in the archives. And your board requested that be located and uploaded. And Director Freitas did email us about 2 weeks ago a link to that study, which we have been looking at. I don't know if you've had opportunities to look at it. If you haven't, I suggest you do. The conditions then that were laid out by the study were quite different than the conditions we have now. The main factor is the study was never enacted on. It was completed. A copy was sent to the FAA as completed, but the Board of Supervisors never acted on it. So I really don't know how many people saw it, in those 24 years. But just to make a few points, there were no flights over Oxnard Shores. There were about 400 to 500 flights that were tracked, actually data tracked on that study. And I think there were 2 that didn't turn left or right prior to the canal. So we didn't have the noise issue then. I've owned my home here since 2000. And I remember that there was no problem, even though we had the commercial airline service at that point and all, but they were heading out, from what I understand it, 270 north and were not an issue. There are a couple of things that look completely different from when the study was done and where the study is now that were cautioned about in the report in 1998. And most of them relate to development of businesses within the airport corridor. A prime example is the Teal Club development. The present Teal Club development of 25 to 40 homes along Little Farm Road and the Teal Club area in that study were deemed non-mitigatable. They could not find a way to mitigate the noise that affects that neighborhood. And the recommendation of the study was that the county buy those homes. So we know that there's some issues there. Also, the Portofino development, that section of the airport used to be zoned as a business park for airport-related businesses. And that was in the study, and it was rezoned to residential and has been entitled to be built out. So please take a look at the study. If you don't have time, please put a staff person on it. We really need to use this moving forward in the new study we're about to do. Thank you so much, Bert, for your amendment to the motion.
Please
that
wrap up.
Thank you.
has been approved. Thank you so much.
All right, next we have Joni Conterno.
Hi,
Joni, you
can
can
you
come
hear
on
me?
and give 3 minutes. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Hi, I'm Joni Conterno, 7-year resident of Oxnard. And during discussions during and after the Oxnard City Council meeting this week, clarified some misunderstandings and miscommunications between aviation enthusiasts and the surrounding community regarding touch and go training flights. I don't want to shut down Oxnard Airport, and I don't want to shut down all touch and go training flights. Kudos to the many pilots who do fly friendly when performing their touch and goes. Keep it up. To be crystal clear, the problem is with touch and go flights that do not follow the recommended pattern and do not fly friendly at Oxnard Airport. Pilots that choose to fly directly over our homes are causing the negative impact to our community's safety and well-being. Do they not know how to fly friendly? Director Freitas shared the plan of hosting an educational seminar next week with the numerous flight schools that use Oxnard Airport for their touch and go trainings. He hopes that providing clear information on where they should fly, where they should turn, and mostly where they should not turn will mitigate the problem over time. We hope so too, but hope is not a strategy. Accountability will be critical in the effectiveness of the Fly Friendly Awareness Program. Private members of the community have been diligent in tracking and reporting violations to the airport when it comes to deviations of touch and goes and also takeoff patterns. It's time consuming, we keep records, we have accountability. The problem is that there is a significant discrepancy in numbers between what individuals have logged as complaints and what the airport releases as having been logged. Director Freitas made a point in his presentation of the airport being transparent with the community. We need transparency on the airport complaint process. In order to see if the proposed new era of educated touch and go flights causes less impact to residents, we need to understand exactly how incoming complaints are processed, what gets recorded and what does not, what is required and what is not. If we are not submitting correctly, please educate us. I volunteered to be the community point person to work with the DOA to be educated in the complaint process so that there is transparency and accuracy. If not me, please find another community candidate. We all hope that with the new pilot education program, there's less for us to complain about. Thank you. And we all do hope that educating flight schools brings much needed changes to the skies above Oxnard.
Thank you. And next we have Susan Tatum.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We got you. Go ahead. 3 minutes.
All right. I'm Susan Tatum, and for the record, I've been an Oxnard Shores homeowner and resident for over 7 years. This past weekend, especially Saturday, was one of many days in which touch and go flights wreaked havoc over Oxnard Shores by flying directly across our homes repeatedly in circular patterns, often containing multiple planes. And like Joni before me, I'm not implying that all touch and goes are bad. There are some pilots who do follow the voluntary flight patterns, proving it can be done, but there are many who do not. Recently, we have also documented an increase in very loud private helicopters flying low over us. Just today, I had to stop a business call 4 times because a private helicopter or helicopters were flying overhead. Inside my home office with earbuds and a noise canceling mic, I couldn't hear what was being said, nor could they hear me. We've also experienced an increase in planes cutting across the shores on takeoff. Airport operations talks about progress, but yet the overflights get worse. Oxnard Airport's tracking of the nuisance it is creating or allowing to happen in local communities is woefully inadequate. Airport operations does not have or provide information on the number of flights or passes made over dense residential areas such as the shores. Instead, they rely on residents to jump through hoops to track tail numbers and fill out a two-page report on the website or leave a message. And for every complaint you get, there are more often than not multiple passes. Noise isn't the only issue. Traffic over our communities is also creating lead hazards and safety issues, which were barely mentioned in Director Freitas' presentation at Tuesday's Oxnard City Council meeting. His only mention of safety was to say more people die in car crashes than airplane crashes. Surely this issue deserves more attention than an answer like that. In her last airport authority meeting, Supervisor Carmen Ramirez expressed her concern about the safety of the Oxnard Airport and asked that discussions continue. I believe that request should be honored. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you, Susan. Last we have Walt Hagedorn. And Walter, good evening. You are welcome to show your video, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Airport Authority members. I'm Walter Hagedorn. I'm a resident of Oxnard Shores. I would like to discuss the 1998 Part 150 study that was done for Oxnard Airport. On the report that was released, it was stated on each page it was not approved by the Board of Supervisors or the FAA. In reading the cover letter from the head of the Ventura County Airports, he states that the noise compatibility study had been completed and that the only reason that it was not submitted for approval to the FAA was that approval is not required as part of the grant. The statement by the airport manager in the letter to the FAA stated that the noise compatibility study had been completed, and appears to me that the acceptance by, and that it had been accepted, that was acceptance by the county, which makes this a complete and official study. The release of the 1998 Part 150 study of Oxnard Airport also shed some light on the operation of the airport at the time and provided data that we had not had. As part of the study, the consultants tracked aircraft arriving and departing from Oxnard Airport and produced a set of maps that showed the actual tracks of the planes, both those using instruments and those using BFR. The maps are on pages 99 through 101 of the study. They reveal an important fact. None of the touch and go tracks, which are actual flights at that time, overflew Oxnard Shores. As far as I know, this is the only study that shows the actual flight patterns out of Oxnard Airport. It shows touch and go landings going both to the right and to the left, avoiding the most populated areas. When we started our discussions with the airport 2 years ago, we were told that right traffic could not be used, but this study shows that they were being used to avoid noise-sensitive areas. The question is why traffic patterns consistent with noise abatement criteria could be flown 24 years ago, but cannot be flown today. Another aspect of this needs to be considered. When the congressional law that dictated noise abatement procedures was written, Section 107 said that a person or group could not sue or take legal action against an airport for noise if a noise contour study had been conducted and they were aware of it. However, it also stated that that indemnification was lost if traffic patterns were changed. It seems that the county may have legal problems since there is a traffic study showing no planes doing touch and go landings over Oxnard Shores in 1998, but they were doing them today. It's also disconcerting that after 2 years of lobbying by the public, the traffic overflying Oxnard Shores last weekend was worse than ever. I was working at my garage when I heard planes going overhead and decided to take some video just to document it. I videoed 6 planes in 10 minutes overflying my home and Oxnard Shores. This is completely unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. We have John George, so let me bring him in. John, when you can hear us, you're welcome to show your camera, and you'd have 3 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We got you, John. Thanks.
Great, thanks.
3 minutes.
Hello, supervisors and authority members. I'm here to voice my support for our Ventura County airports. In addition to recognizing the great airport benefits to all of our residents, services like enhanced fire and police protection, flight training for our sons and daughters, supporting our great agricultural industry, and providing jobs and cash infusions into our local economy, we've had great recent developments. The FAA's September 1st approval of 100 UL unleaded aviation fuel. Our Oxnard FBO, Golden West, told me on Monday that they expect to have it ready to dispense within a month. That makes 100 low lead avgas a dead issue. Number two, a great record attendance at the recent Wings Over Camarillo event. 20,000 people from all over the county show that our airports are more popular than ever with the general public. Number three, Mr. Freitas's and Mr. Nafee's work to reimagine and publicize both airports' traffic flows so that our airports can be even better neighbors. But instead of celebrating our great airports and aviation history, after all, Oxnard Airport has been operating since what, the 30s? A very small group of people, some of whom are recent transplants, have voiced opposition to Oxnard Airport and the operations that have been going on here for 80 plus years. In spite of the fact that they sign, as all home purchasers must by law sign, a state required document acknowledging the existence of the nearby airport and its operations, they claim that they are victims and were ignorant of the airport. This is really puzzling to me because one of the leaders of their group proclaims himself as a multi-million-dollar real estate agent with offices in Studio City and Hollywood. We all know that he's familiar with these disclosures. They intentionally use misinformation and fear tactics, such as claiming that people on the ground are somehow harmed by light aircraft, without any scientific or formal proof whatsoever. They also choose to deny facts by saying that Oxnard traffic is heavier than in times past. This ignores the only statistical evidence that exists from the DOA, which Mr. Freitas has repeated several times at several meetings, that in fact, over the years, traffic has decreased at Oxnard Airport. And they try and sow fear with scary possibilities and frightened exclamations, but ignoring the incredibly safe nature of general aviation. The city of Oxnard has seen one aviation fatality in the last 9 years. Try comparing that to traffic statistics. Can we stop the misinformation and this misplaced extremism? The Department of Airports and our county pilots have worked to address issues that result from normal airport operations. Their group just repeats false charges to try and stir fear among others who don't know the facts. And they repeat these false charges at meetings throughout the county. That doesn't encourage cooperation, just more extremism. If this group is sincere, please drop the untruthful rhetoric. The FAA, the county, and our pilots are working to address issues.
Need to wrap up.
So that our airports will serve our residents in the best way possible for many years to come. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, I have one more hand in the air from Lynn Mulhart. I've attempted to promote, but has not happened. So it's possible that the person wants to speak on a different item. But let's see, Lynn, if you want to accept the promotion to panelist and provide a 3-minute comment, you're welcome to do that. Oh, it worked that time. Give you a second to connect. When you're ready, you can take your 3 minutes.
Thank you for training me how to run this process, which is counter to what I'm going to tell you next. I've been a professional pilot for over 50 years. I've flown in the military, F-4 Phantoms, Southeast Asia as a combat pilot. I retired as a captain for United Airlines. I've flown corporate airplanes. I have a private airplane at the Oxnard Airport. My interest in aviation started at the Oxnard Airport with my dad and goes back to the 1940s when my dad tried to learn how to fly out of the Oxnard Airport. But because he's deaf in one ear, he couldn't figure out where the noise is coming from. The Oxnard Airport and the Camarillo Airport, which was previously the Oxnard Air Force Base, both those airports, their approach and departure corridors go right between our property on the east end of the city. I grew up as a kid watching those jets go over my head. My passion for aviation was created by watching and going to the air shows at the Oxnard Airport, now the Camarillo Airport, to Point Magoo, to the Oxnard Airport. And eventually we'd always go out to Edwards Air Force Base. I believe that what we have in front of us today, and by the way, I'm 74 years old and I have been a resident of Oxnard my whole life except my time in the service. And the Oxnard Airport, the Camarillo Airport, aviation in this area has been wonderful for all kinds of industries. And right now we have an aviation industry that is growing so fast they can't find pilots. And we've got to figure out a way to introduce kids to aviation, but it's just not aviation. If you get excited about aviation, you get excited about math. If you get excited about math, it's mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, aeronautical engineering, all kinds of engineers that we need. It's about accountants and mechanics and everybody that lives and supports aviation. It's a great industry. And for those that have been here a short time, this is not the first time I've heard this complaint. But the fact of the matter is this airport and the Camarillo Airport were built by the U.S. government to support Oxnard Airport, to support basic training during World War II. And across the street from the entrance to the Oxnard Airport is the housing area, still in effect today as housing for folks in the city of Oxnard. I believe the solution to the problem is education. And if we had time, I can explain to you that you cannot drive an airport down the middle of a two-lane road, airplane down the middle of a two-lane road. The dynamics are constantly moving. That's why it's training. And I would encourage you that it's training to solve this problem. And I think with training, we can get out of this dilemma. But let's not use this as a tool to shut down the airports. I believe that's where you're headed. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Mulhart. We have one attendee with hand raised, and that person has already spoken. So I believe we are ready to move on. I do want to just ensure Mr. Freitas doesn't have a comment. Your hand is up.
I do. Under public comment, I just wanted to take the opportunity, because it's not on the agenda, to introduce our new PIO for the Airports Department, Jeanette. And Jeanette, if you just want to give a 1-minute background for everybody, just to introduce yourself and tell us about yourself real quick. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I will try to take less than a minute. My name is Jeanette Haregi. I'm really excited. This is my first week with airports, and just really excited to be part of the team. I'm going on 7 years with the County of Ventura. I've spent the previous little more than 6.5 years with the Area Agency on Aging as their public information officer. My background is in communication and journalism. I wrote a column for 13 years in the Ventura County Star focusing on local military veterans, and I've also published books focusing on that column. I've worked for NBC's Today Show as an associate producer, Pepperdine School of Law as a writer and editor, and Cal Lutheran as an adjunct professor in the communication department, and also as their media relations coordinator. So I'm just excited to learn everything there is to learn about the airports and to bring my skill set to help, communicate all aspects of the airport. And I appreciate the public comments, because I will be eventually working and responding with all of you. So thank you all, and I'm glad to be here.
Welcome, Jeanette.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you all.
Welcome, Jeanette. We're happy to have you.
Chairs, I believe that concludes item 5.
Okay. So that brings us to new business. And we begin with Camarillo. And so item A is receive and file regarding planned pavement repairs.
And I will kick this item to Aaron from our team. Aaron, if you would.
Good evening, Chair Santangelo, authority members. Earlier this year, your authority and the Board of Supervisors approved our 5-year capital improvement plan for the Camarillo Airport. And a project that was included in that plan was for a reconstruction of the runway 826 and connector taxiways scheduled for 2025. However, the runway centerline and taxiway alpha in some areas are showing signs of cracking that needs attention. I have a few slides so you can see what we're seeing But before we get there, I do want to make sure that I stress that there's no current safety issue. We're just making sure that we're addressing repairs as necessary so that we ensure satisfactory service until reconstruction in 2025. Dave, if you could go to the next slide. So here is a nice shot of the Camarillo runway. And Dave, thank you. And here are some existing conditions along the runway center line where you see longitudinal fatigue cracking. And then Dave, if you could go to the next slide for taxiway Alpha. This area actually was repaired in a temporary fix at the beginning of July. And so we are working on this interim fix is what's next. We're going to remove and replace some pavement in the north and some areas in the south of taxiway Alpha that is seeing alligator cracking. The project area, as I described, is going to be for the runway, is going to be the centerline section, which is going to be 8 feet wide for the length of the runway, which is just about 6,000 feet or so. The taxiway Alpha repairs include a section just south of the runway, and then from taxiway Hotel down south to taxiway Foxtrot.
For anybody that may ask the basic question, why in the world down a 150-foot wide piece of pavement is the center, the only place that we've had this, exceptional damage? It's basically because that's where the center line paint is. So it basically typically cracks underneath that 3-foot wide painting, the center line stripe. Anyway, sorry.
Sure. And part of the reason why our pavements are scheduled for reconstruction is that we have done geotechnical investigation that indicates that the subgrade needs to be addressed in that reconstruction in 2025. So some of what you're seeing is a result of that poor subgrade and current operations. We have, for example, taxiway Alpha is about 42 years old. So we do expect, even with rehabilitation and maintenance, that you would see wear and tear. And we certainly, taxiway Alpha in particular is the one connector taxiway that sees all traffic. This is the taxiway that all aircraft take to access the runway. And so it gets that slow rolling, the weight sitting kind of along the center line. And that's why we're seeing the alligator cracking along with the poor subgrade conditions. So one of the things I wanted to mention while we have this slide up is that as we are entering a design contract with Javiation. We actually have one in place just recently. And the work for the runway, we will likely occur over multiple night closures with reopening each morning for aircraft operations. And but the taxiway Alpha work will likely require a full closure period or periods in order to accomplish that work. The actual construction schedule, though, will be determined during the design process. And we also are going to make sure that we consult or work with tenants so that whatever are the options available, we also take into consideration the voices of the tenants in that process. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Oh, I apologize. The title of our document, and I failed to say this, is we're in design now, but we're actually not looking to go out to complete these repairs until early 2023. So we'll go out to bid in 2023, January, February timeframe, with construction to follow shortly after that. All right, I see hands.
Okay, let's start, Mr. Bear.
You just answered part of my question. I wanted to make sure this was going to be put out for bid and not a no bid contract. You made a comment, Ms. Powers, about Javiation's role in this process, and I didn't quite catch it. Are they just helping with the design part of it? And is that part of their existing contract with the airport, or is that something separate and apart from their existing contract?
So, you know, Javiation is our consultant selected through the 5-year consultant selection process from December of 2020. This is a project that that falls into the category of what they would cover. So they are going to be doing the design. They'll assist in the bid administration, meaning that they'll prepare all the bid documents, you know, addenda, help with bid reviews, and then they will also help with the construction management services once the project is bid and a contractor is on board.
Is there any guesstimate what this might cost?
Yes. So the entire project, we're projecting between 750,000 to, you know, up to $1 million. You know, this is a project that, you know, we sure wish we could put off till 2025, but we don't believe that that would be in the best interests of everyone.
Well, and the integrity of the runway obviously is a safety issue. So if it needs to be done, it needs to be done, and as soon as possible. So thank you.
Councilmember Perrello.
Thank you. I am not a member of the Camarillo Airport Authority, but I do have a question. I appreciate Ms. Powers' explanation, but I'd like to ask Mr. Freitas again. He explained why the cracking was in a specific area in the center line. I didn't understand that. Can you please explain that again? Thank you. That's my only question.
Yeah, it's just common that underneath, because the area is painted over, the asphalt cools and expands at different temperatures than the other pavement because it's got layers of paint over the top of it. So I've been doing this for 30 years, and that's typically where you have failures. The first failures on a paved area is underneath the center line or areas that are covered in paint. So I couldn't tell you the engineering thermodynamics behind it, but all I can tell you is 30 years of experience. That's typically where you see it happen first.
Thank you very much, and I hope to carry that information to my city and learn something here. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Supervisor Long.
Yes, I was just wondering, I know that we are doing a whole construction of the taxiway and so forth, and you said in 2025, is there any way to speed that up so that we're not using more money for this? I just wanted to ask and make sure that that was transparent why we're doing a repair and then 2 years later coming through and replacing all of it.
Sure. It's a good question. And I have 2 parts to answer. The simple answer is, unfortunately, no. So we've been pushing for the runway reconstruction. I think we actually started trying to get reconstruction in 2021, and you have to work with the FAA for programming and also to meet their requirements. So we do have, we're on track right now we're getting ready to enter preliminary design, and then we'll go into environmental and then design, final design, all to be in a good place for that grant in 2025. And we're getting contribution along the way from the FAA, and it just takes time. Additionally, in 2025, you know, our ask is close to $40 million, which is a very big ask. And so the FAA has already informed us that that kind of money is going to require, you know, this project, we need to look seriously at how we would phase it. It's difficult, it gets complicated, but it's certainly a process that we're pursuing diligently, and we are already working today just to be on track for 2025 to meet FAA requirements. The other avenue that the airport did explore is that we saw this problem And we actually went to the FAA and said, hey, is there any way we could get this on an earlier, just this repair as an eligible grant item and just get a grant to help us with this. And the FAA wasn't able to get us in early. They said, well, if you do everything to FAA standards and meet all FAA grant assurances, you might be able to get reimbursed later on. But then they said it would bump out the runway reconstruction project to a later date. So it was sort of a catch-22. So the airport has decided to do an interim fix out of pocket, and then to pursue the reconstruction of the full project in 2025.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure it was clear for our community the reasons why we were doing this and how does that relate to the next project coming up. So thank you for that clarity.
They're great questions. Thank you, everyone.
Mr. Bear, did you have questions again?
I did. I just wanted to, really, it's a point of clarification for anybody who's watching or who's going to watch the recording. Ms. Powers, you talked about the big ask of $40 million. That the big ask is an FAA grant. It's not county tax dollars. Is that correct?
That's correct. It would be, the ask would be for a federal grant.
Right. So there's no county tax dollars involved in that.
No, the only county obligation would come from the airport enterprise fund for the share, the 10% share.
Right. Great. Thank you.
Okay, I don't think we have any more questions. I would entertain a motion at this point, unless there's further discussion.
I move to accept receive the report.
I'll second.
Who is that? Sorry.
I believe that was Supervisor Long, correct?
Oh, of course.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead with a roll call vote.
All right, the Camarillo Airport Authority Supervisor Long.
Yes.
Supervisor Huber.
Yes.
Mayor Molche.
Yes.
Chair Santangelo.
Yes.
And Vice Chair Bear.
Yes.
Okay, that passes unanimously.
All right.
Thank you.
That will bring us to item B, which is.
Thank you, Chair. The next three items will be with Madeline, our lease manager from the airport. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Chair Santangelo and authority members. Item B and C are related and may be somewhat familiar. They are the result of an original lease with a gentleman named Bill Burr, who signed a long-term lease for two hangars, 65A and 65B, and then subsequently split that lease into two. When that happened, there was a lingering use clause that needs to be amended, because the original use clause with Mr. Burr provided for a requirement that the tenant engage in the business of providing aircraft repair and also Part 135 charter service. The two folks who inherited these leases, 65A and B, don't provide charter service, and Mr. Burr hadn't done so for many years as well. So we just are trying to clean up the use clause for both new tenants, 65A and B, one with Studio Wings and the other with Brett Lee Aviation. Studio Wings is primarily a storage hangar, and Brett Lee Aviation provides maintenance and repair services. So both of these, their third amendments, clean that language up and provide them the option, should they wish to in the future, they could add it back in, but not the obligation. Is there any questions?
Unmuted. Councilmember Perrello.
Yes, thank you very much. One question. Again, I'm not on the Camarillo, but I am concerned. Are there any similar issues in the Oxnard Airport Authority property location? That's my only question.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Are there any similar situations where leases have changed and there hasn't been the attention paid that should have been paid? So now that we're going to clean something up in Camarillo, is there a similar situation at the Oxnard Airport?
No.
Thank you.
Sure. And actually, it would be helpful. Can you, Dave, advance the slide that shows the location of these hangars? I know we've done that in the past. Yeah.
All right, and are there any more questions?
Yes, I do.
Supervisor, you're breaking up.
Yeah.
Do the video.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me now?
No.
Okay. I'll ask my question later. The question is this really consistent as Commissioner Camarillo suggested?
I'm sorry, I still can't understand.
Okay. No.
Supervisor, your audio is breaking up completely.
Never mind. Thank you.
No.
I think I heard never mind, thank you.
The joys of technology.
Oh. All right. Are you sure, Supervisor Long? Is that okay?
Yes, okay, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so moving on, are there any other questions or comments? Okay, can we, do we need a separate motion for each of these?
Yes, the county council had asked me to process these as two separate items.
Okay. Okay, well then let's start with item B. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the amendment to the lease.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Councilmember Perillo, was your hand up again, or?
Yes, I do have a question. If that were to happen to any of us and the voice goes out, can we message a question to you?
Good question. We don't have the chat feature enabled, so that's.
Okay, all right, that answers my question. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on item B. Let's have a roll call vote.
All right, the Camarillo Airport Authority Supervisor Long.
Yeah.
Supervisor Huber,
Yes.
Mayor Molche,
Yes.
Chair Santangelo,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Bearer.
Yes.
Item 6B passes unanimously.
All right, and we will move on to item C. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? If not, let's have a roll call vote for item C.
For item C, Camarillo Airport Authority Supervisor Long,
Yeah.
Supervisor Huber,
Yes.
Mayor Molche,
Yes.
Chair Santangelo,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Bearer.
Yes.
All right, item C passes unanimously.
Okay, and that brings us now to item D, which is the approval of an authorization for the Director of Airports or designee to sign the lease agreement with Sky 805.
Madeline, if you would.
Sure. Dave, can you pull up the first slide? Yes, good, thank you. Good evening again. This is a proposal for a new lease for the area that was formerly occupied and currently occupied by Channel Islands Aviation and its affiliated company, Aviation Partners Hangar. If you recall, these leases were acquired recently in a stock purchase, and each lease has a remaining term. The Channel Islands lease has a remaining term of 23 years, and the Aviation Partners lease has a remaining term of 2 years. The purchasers of the business have come to us with a proposal for a new lease and new investment to expand the property limits to include additional parking and ramp area, and renovate the old brown hangar that is approximately 70 years old. And the somewhat newer hangar, Aviation Partners hangar, is newer, but it doesn't have the right clearances for current aircraft heights. This is a 40-year lease with a 10-year option proposed to be signed and effective. They'll have 5 years to complete the renovations. It will greatly enhance the offerings for the airport. And in the meantime, the operators will continue to operate the Channel Islands Aviation Services as an FBO. If you'll note on the drawing, you'd probably have to enlarge it a little bit. The FBO has its own separate hangar, and there are additional storage hangars with offices available as well. The required investment or offered investment is approximately $20 million. And as I mentioned, the use clause will remain the same. So they will continue to offer the same services as Channel Islands Aviation and Aviation Partners currently offers. You can see the existing layout has a smaller footprint. The red border is the Channel Islands existing lease, and the blue border is the Aviation Partners lease area, which is doesn't really have any parking and very limited ramp space. And then Dave, if you could flip back to the proposed layout, you'll see that the ramp is greatly expanded. The square footage is tripled, and the rent is $465,000 a year compared to the current rent of $280,000 a year. But we're very excited about the possibility of new buildings, new architecture, new business created here, and look forward to your comments.
Thank you, Madeline. All right, questions. Mr. Bear.
I've had a chance to review the report and also the lease, and I have a lot of concerns. First of all, Sky 805 is, at least in part, the same entity that is developing the Cloud 9 development at the East End, RKR. And I'm concerned about the same entity controlling so much real estate at the airport. We're talking about 500,000, 500,000 square feet of ramp space, up from 140,000. So that's a huge increase. I'm also concerned that the report is pretty vague on what they intend to do. Renovating or tearing down the hangars for contemporary aircraft. Well, what does that mean? Is that Gulfstreams, Boeing business jets? Current standards and aviation requirements, what are those? And on and on and on. As I go through the lease, the authorized services and all of that is just generally very vague. And I think that before we go ahead and commit this kind of real estate to a developer, we need to hear from the developer about what their plans are specifically, not generalities that are in the report. And I'm not faulting the staff for the way the report is written, but I think we need more information from the developer before we can decide whether it's appropriate to lease 500,000 square feet of airport space to them, in addition to the airport space that they already control at the east end of the airport. So my intention is to vote no at this juncture and ask that we get a presentation from the developer about what's intended and what their plans are for the short term and the long term.
Can I make a comment, Scott? I wanted to, this is a little separate from what your comments were, but mindful of your previous comment. that there's a correction on page 19 of the lease. Paragraph 5, their permanent loan, and the missing languages and construction loan. So,
Okay, now I understand what you're talking about. I didn't catch that this time around, but I did as I was going through the lease. For example, under section 4B, it talks about freight. Well, what is freight? Is that Amazon? Now, I know Director Freitas, and I respect him, and he knows this, has said no Amazon. But then what is Sky 805 intending when they say they're going to be offloading freight? So as I said, I think we need just more information from them in the form of a presentation, so we have more concrete idea about what their intentions are. I'm also concerned as I look at this graphic and compare it to the existing ramp space about the loss of transient ramp space, which will undoubtedly become ramp space that gets charged for. Planes that come in, helicopters that come in. It looks like at least one of the helipads is sort of kind of in the new ramp space. You can see the one public helipad to the left of the new ramp space, and the second helipad to the right of that is bisected by the border, by the west border of that ramp space. So are we losing a public helipad? Is Sky 805 going to be charging landing fees for someone who wants to come into the waypoint and have a $100 burger? So as I said, I think we need to hear more from the developer before we can contemplate giving up 500,000 square feet of ramp space to them.
Keith, did you have some comments about the ramp and the transient area?
Yeah, we weren't necessarily asked a question, but I can at least talk about the transient. There's plenty of transient parking in front of the Waypoint Cafe. That doesn't go away. What is unusual is the situation we've currently have where there's this large business and there's no ramp out in front of it. All of that pavement falls to the airport. So the maintenance and everything else, we're not collecting any revenue on it, and we've got to maintain it. So what we see here is typical of a business where they've got their business, their hangars, their FBO office, and then a large ramp. You see that at Air 7, Sun Air. That's the norm. And that's what we would expect to see, which is what we wanted them to do, encourage them to do that. We do have plenty of transient parking, as I mentioned, in front of the Waypoint Cafe. You're correct. Would we have to make some modifications maybe to the heliport, helicopter landing spots or things like that? And we would make those adjustments or work with the FBO to exclude a portion if we needed to.
Director, as I look at this layout, you can see all the planes parked against the row of hangars to the west end of transient parking. Aren't those parked there on a regular basis? Those aren't transient aircraft. Aren't those one of the training schools aircraft?
Madeline, you'd have to help me out with.
I know that CFI is in some of the rows, but there's transient mixed in there as well. Again,
Right.
I think Director Freitas mentioned we obviously, graphics are graphics, but his design will be subject to the Department of Airports approval. So.
Yeah, we'd have to relay out that area to maximize the way it's set right now. It doesn't look like it'd be maximized, all those parkings.
Well, as I look at it, I just did a quick count. I see 14 airplane spots and one helipad. And some of those airplane spots are full-time aircraft. So they're not really, even though technically they may be listed as transient, they're not, because there's aircraft there on a regular basis. So that's not, respectfully, I don't think that's a lot of transient parking, especially on a busy Saturday or Sunday where people are flying into the Waypoint to grab a burger or a barbecue tri-tip sandwich. So again, I think we need to hear from the developer, and I think this needs to be rethought in terms of its impact overall on the airport. And again, I'm concerned about one entity controlling so much real estate, not only this 500,000 square feet, but the hangars on the east end and the Cloud 9 development.
And that issue I would like to point out is, we do have some limitations on us saying, and first of all, I might disagree with you that one entity owning two locations And there is a partnership in this entity. It's not the same entity, first of all. But again, if the FAA would frown upon us saying, well, we think you have too much. And the other side of it is we do want folks to invest. You know, there isn't necessarily a long line of folks that are willing to put in $20 million investment in our airports. So we do want to encourage that as well.
And
And to your other concern about cargo, well, we have a joint powers agreement. We have limitations on the size of airplanes that could land at the airport. So, you know, what we have, you're looking for specifics in our lease, as Madeline mentioned, it's a carryover from the existing requirements in the same business that's operating now. But there's other things that we would limit to the size and the types of operations as well as that lease itself.
Well, it may be a carryover from the existing operation, but the new landlord, or the new tenant, I should say, has already demonstrated they want to bring large aircraft into the airport. They're building 4 executive hangars at the East End for large aircraft. So we have the potential for additional noise for if more large aircraft are brought in. And again, I'm not saying we shouldn't do this deal at some point or a version of this deal. I want to hear more from the developer about what their plans are. And after that, then we can make an informed decision whether to approve the lease or not, or to modify the plans. I just think it's premature at this point to based on a staff report, which again is very well written, but doesn't have a lot of specifics in it, which I suspect is because the developer didn't supply those specifics. And I would like to hear those specifics before we sign off on a lease like this.
Mayor Molche, I see your hand.
Thank you. I want to echo Mr. Bear's concerns in regards to some of the lack of information and the direction in which the tenant anticipates kind of taking this. I would like a little bit more information. I'm less opposed or concerned about one tenant or individuals having 500,000 square feet of space, but I am more concerned about just simply not understanding kind of the end game and what the intentions are with taking on more of this space and what kind of build out and what kind of aircraft they tend to operate here, and how that might differ from the historical operations.
Chair, pardon me, Chair, at the appropriate time, I did promote Nick Martino as a panelist, as a public comment. So when you're ready for that, we can recognize that person.
Okay, let's take Supervisor Long's comment. Hopefully we can hear her.
Thank you very much. I was going to ask Director Freitas or whoever could answer this. Is this lease an extension of what is currently there, or is this a lease to expand and do whatever they want? Because I'm hearing concerns, but I was under the understanding that this was a lease agreement with the current situation it was. Maybe I'm misunderstanding, so I wanted some more clarity.
I can try and address that, and perhaps Nick could expand on that when he has a chance to speak. But the use clause is similar in terms of its FBO responsibilities and storage hangar responsibilities that was contained in the Aviation Partners lease. This is just more. So it's new, it's appropriate size, height-wise for planes to be able to be sheltered in those storage hangars. They'll continue to operate, and I'm sure Nick will comment upon all their services that are currently offered through Channel Islands Aviation. So it's more.
Okay, so is the assumption that I've heard tonight that they are bigger planes, that they can do whatever they want, or are they constrained to what the lease agreement is currently?
The current lease agreement simply specifies storage hangars, so it doesn't talk about plane size, but again, those are restricted in other fashions here at the airport. So
Okay, yes, and I understand the restrictions, especially the council members from the city of Camarillo, I think would be very concerned on that with our agreement of the JPA and the other agreements. So I wanted to make sure we touched upon that and that there is reassurance that that's not to happen. So thank you.
Let's see. I see hands still up. I don't know if they're just not down or if it's a second round of comment.
Mine's up.
Okay, Mr. Bear.
Ms. Hurley, I just want to make sure I understand, following up on Supervisor Long's question. It's not just that they're continuing the operations of Channel Islands. They're talking about tearing down hangars, building larger hangars, investing $20 million. I mean, there's a significant expansion of what Channel Islands is doing now. Am I correct in that sort of interpretation of what's happening here?
Not in terms of its definition. So storage hangar is the same. FBO function is the same. So in terms of a use clause, it's the same.
I understand the definitions, but what I want to be sure I'm understanding is the practice. What's going to happen? Are we going to have larger aircraft? Are we going to have more traffic over Old Town that's going to create noise issues? Are we going to have less transient parking for small general aviation aircraft? Or are we going to have parking that's going to cost general aviation aircraft money to land at Camarillo Airport and go have a burger at the Waypoint? So, I think that
we would have to defer that to the business. That I know he's online. It looks like one of the partners is online. Maybe he could answer.
And I think we need a presentation. I don't know that Mr. Martino in a 3-minute public comment can answer those questions. I think we need to hear from them very specifically what their plans are and have them be able to answer questions. I just don't think that this is the moment that they can make that kind of presentation.
Okay, I'm going to move on to Councilmember Perrello, and then we'll hear from Mr. Martino.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I serve on Oxnard, but this has been some very good questions asked by the members of this board. I'd just like to start with my first question. How long will this lease be for?
It's a 40-year lease with a 10-year option.
Okay, 40 years.
Right.
There's been a question asked.
Oh, sorry. The existing lease still has 23 years to run. On the Channel Islands side, on the aviation partners, it has 2 years to run, but that lease would be terminated and replaced with a new 40-year lease with additional capital improvements requirements.
So in other words, the lease that has 20 some years to run, we could be, and please correct me, we could be looking at a 60-year lease?
No, it's terminated, so it's replaced.
Okay.
The two existing leases get replaced.
Thank you for that clarification. The question that I have that the member of the public asked, the approximate size of storage, that kind of thing. I do recall, having been on this board for a while, the issues that came with the new construction that's going on at the east corner of the airport. And as you know, sitting as one member of the City of Oxnard Council, listening to this story, I couldn't believe the excitement that was involved when there were questions about the size of the door. And then when it came about the size of the door, well, the size of the door indicates what size airplane you can put in. Do you have an idea, or do we have an idea, the size of the door they're looking at that could answer the question about how big of an airplane are you planning to put in there? Because I do remember it got very hot with other board members. Nobody got mad, but it was trying to get a straight answer. And then there was a lot of assumptions made on the answer that was given. And I think that needs to be addressed. And I do think that on something this big, a little bit more of a presentation would be beneficial. I know that I would be requesting the same thing if it was in the airport that I represent. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready for our public comment.
Okay, Chair, if you would indulge, if you wish to make a public comment on agenda item 6D like Delta, please press the raise hand button, or if you are calling in, press star, then 9 to be added to the speaker queue when prompted by the chair of the commission. And with that, Nick, good evening. I'll give you 3 minutes and you can fire away. You may still be muted. Nick, we don't hear you. Still muted. There you go. Evening. He may have a microphone problem.
I think so. Well, I want to hear from him, so I'm trying to give him a little time. Well, all right, I think we need to move on. Doesn't look like we're getting anywhere unless somebody has another way to speak with him.
He could call him.
Can I ask a question? If there is, if we're not able to do that, is there a reason that this can be, can we continue this to the next meeting so that we have more information? And a presentation by the least person?
If you're asking, is there a specific timing? There is not a, Madeline, correct me, there's nothing that forces it at this point. So
No.
yes, we could ask that the new owner attend one of our next meetings to make a presentation, for sure.
Okay, I would motion for this to be continued to the next meeting so that the presentation for the lease agreement be made so we can make sure the questions that are asked today are addressed.
Huber, second the motion.
That was Supervisor Huber? Okay.
Second the motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Unless there's any more discussion, we can go ahead with a roll call vote.
One quick ask on that or amendment. If they're going to give a presentation, can I request that if that's possible, included in our packet, so that way it's not being delivered to us, in the moment, but we have time to also review it.
Sure.
And the only thing I would add to that, then, that it might not be the next meeting, it might be November, depending if they've got to prepare something. So I would say within the next 2 meetings, maybe.
Why don't we just say it gets postponed to a future meeting when they're ready to make a presentation?
Perfect.
That works.
I'll amend that, my motion. Thank you. Good teamwork.
And Supervisor Huber, are you okay with seconding the amended motion?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Unless there's further discussion, let's go ahead with a vote.
Thank you. For Camarillo Airport Authority, Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Huber,
Yes.
Mayor Molche,
Yes.
Chair Santangelo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bear.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
All right. So that moves us on to item E. Oh, this is an easy one. We know this one. Do I have a motion?
I move we adopt resolution number 13, unless anybody
I'll
else.
second.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Bear and a second from Mayor Molche. Let's do a roll call vote.
Absolutely. Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Huber,
Yes.
Mayor Molche,
Yes.
Chair Santangelo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bear.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Okay, and then this is where we've amended the agenda. We're going to skip ahead to item J, which is joint Camarillo and Oxnard, approval of the voluntary noise abatement procedure pilot guides.
Dave, you were going to take this one?
Sorry,
go.
yes.
I made it. Okay. And your
Right, just
ears
isn't
don't
politician.
deceive you.
She doesn't get it.
Your ears don't deceive you. Anna has come in, so I'm free to do that.
No, but you have to remember,
She shot her watch.
well, her quarterback's going, your quarterback isn't gone. I mean, your quarterback is your biggest scoring player.
Yeah, a
Sounds
live
like
mic.
somebody's
How many
doing
other
a
players does
fantasy
she have
football
going?
league.
Who's talking football? Live mic?
Sounds like a fantasy football league being organized.
What are we missing?
I'm not sure who's the one speaking. Anyway, okay. Live TV, you gotta love it. Okay. I'm Dave Nafee, Deputy Director. I'm pleased to present for your approval voluntary noise abatement procedure pilot guides for Camarillo and Oxnard airports. And this has come between your boards twice now. And we've gathered lots of comments, and we're ready to move forward with a final version for approval. And just as a reminder, we've requested and received comments from these groups: neighborhood associations and residents, and flight schools, aeronautical businesses like FBOs, pilot organizations like the EAA, the Experimental Aircraft Association, et cetera, advisory bodies such as yourselves, and aviation planning consultants who helped us put these together. So we have a lot of input and a lot of people to thank for what they have contributed to this process. And we did have a couple of comments, and I will just point out, and I apologize if this isn't super clear, but for Camarillo, for instance, on the northwest side of the image in the upper left, we have a gentle transition over to the 101 westbound, and a note there to acknowledge that that we'll have Class Delta airspace for Oxnard Airport starting at the surface to 2,000 feet. So that was a comment we received. I believe we've simplified this document. We've removed things like AGL and MSL, and just are referring to these in just whole thousands of feet. So I think that we've got a really great product. I think we've got some good imagery. We've got good current information that is going to be useful for the pilots at both airports. At Oxnard, we have extended the lines well past the shoreline, and that's supported by some text for that purpose. So I believe that we've been responsive to all the comments that we're able to, and I believe that all of the comments were excellent. So we've got two great pilot guides, front and back, so now, upon receiving approvals from our advisory bodies, we begin the rollout. So we have a fly-friendly form. I'm not going to steal Director Freitas's thunder. I'm sure he wants to mention that in the director's report, but we do have an opportunity to get these in the hands of pilots, flight instructors, students right away. We can bring that to our website, so that'll be promoted right on the front page of our website and easily accessible, and we're proud to share that. And then also printed media. We'll have display boards. We'll have things to hand out. We'll have things that a pilot could stick on his knee while going down, flying toward these airports, and so this is going to be accessible to the pilots, and we will have that ability to say, well, this is information that's been made available to you, and we'd like to refer this to you. So we'll be working very hard on the education piece, which is one of the cornerstones of our Fly Friendly program. So we again thank to everyone for all the valuable input we received, and we look forward to your questions and hopefully an approval for moving forward with this. I do see that we have one written comment on this from the public, and we have several hands in the air. So at the appropriate time, there's that, and Anna's going to read out the request for people to join and comment if they wish.
Thank you. If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item number 6J, please press the raise hand button. Or if you're calling in, press star then 9 to be added to the speaker queue when prompted by the chair of the authority.
Okay.
Would you like to, Chair, would you like the written comment?
Yeah, let's start with the written.
First comment is from Ms. Rita Weingarten. It reads, some neighborhoods in Oxnard are experiencing excessive noise from the touch and go flight training exercises. Our quality of life is being severely affected by the constant noise. We recorded decibel readings greater than 90 decibels from these planes flying low over our homes. I work remotely from home, but cannot most days due to the noise. I have to seek out libraries and quiet coffee shops to work. I no longer entertain at my home because of the constant airplanes flying low and loud over my home because of the loud noise. This is no way to live. No human can sustain these noise levels. The state of California Health and Safety Code 46000 states that, in quotes, excessive noise is a serious hazard to the public health and welfare, end quote. Also stated, in quotes, exposure to certain levels of noise can result in physiological, psychological, and economic damage, end quote. Health and Safety Code 46000 states that, in quotes, it is policy of the state to provide an environment for all Californians free from noise that jeopardizes their health and welfare, end quote. This health and safety code was adopted by legislation and is enforceable. In 1998, a noise study was performed for the Oxnard Airport. The FAA approved the study and the noise exposure maps are currently at the FAA. There were, quote, learned sensors, end quote, placed around the airport and suggestions made to comply with health and safety codes. The study states that anything above 65 decibels is unacceptable. And that concludes the comment from Ms. Rita Weingarten.
Terrific. Thank you. We have 4 other members of the public. At a time that you'd like to introduce them, we can.
Are the hands up from the authority members' questions?
Yes.
All right, let's take those questions first and then we'll move on to the public comments. Mr. Bear.
Trying to get my camera to open up. It doesn't want to, so I'll just, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. I will just have my audio. I just wanted to commend Director Freitas and his staff for the hard work they've done on this to mitigate, to help mitigate the noise issue. I know that they're doing yeoman's work, person's work, and this is just the first of many efforts. And I'm just happy to see that it's happened. And I know a lot of hard work has gone into this, and I just want to make sure that staff realizes that it's appreciated.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Bear. Councilman Perillo.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have a question on the map that was showing the flight rounds on the Oxnard Airport. Can we put that up? Bingo, right there. Thank you. I have a question. One individual from the public has mentioned previously at multiple meetings, I believe that Mr. Benedetto, I believe, he's talking about on the lower left-hand corner of this photograph, there's a statement. It says, just above it, piston-powered aircraft turn left before Edison Canal or continue to climb well past the shoreline before turning crosswind. What is the definition of well past? There have been complaints that the planes turn as soon as they get to the beach and that the noise, they should go further. Is there some explanation that a council member can use when we use the term well past? And having attended this beach and seen planes do that, including the knuckleheads that decide to buzz the beach, which I hope they get in big trouble, I think it's a valid question. Thank you. That's my only question.
I'll take that. We did have some debate about whether or not it was reasonable to put a distance on there. 1 mile, half mile, 5 miles. We also talked about time, say fly 30 seconds past the shoreline or things like that. Because of the fact that that's not something that's typically trained to pilots, when flying the pattern, we wanted to make sure that we at least acknowledge the fact that you don't turn at the beach. Once you hit the shoreline, keep going for a bit. Well past is the verbiage we've chosen, but as you might expect, that's just a bit more vague, but it also acknowledges the fact that it's two things. One is it's meant to be something that does not displace the responsibility of the pilot to fly safely. So it's still on the pilot to do that, and judgment is required in all phases of the operation of an airplane. So we acknowledge that, and then we also want to make sure that that we acknowledge that you don't typically specify distance when you are training a pilot. And so anybody who's normally flying a traffic pattern, either for training or for currency, is not going to really understand how to implement that. And so we're shooting the gap here. We can always make adjustments if things aren't working, but we do want to acknowledge that it's a voluntary program, and we want to fit it into the normal training curriculum that a pilot is going to be following. So I hope that's somewhat satisfactory of an answer, but we did talk about a number of different ways to express that.
Dave, and I'd like to,
Very helpful. Very helpful. Thank you very much.
I could just add to that as well, which is the whole point of this is our first shot at this. We do expect revisions over time, that things might need to be tweaked and adjusted as we progress, to clarify something, to adjust something. But this is our first attempt.
Okay, Supervisor Long.
Thank you. I wanted to commend the staff and Mr. Freitas for really making more of an outreach than we've had in years past in regards to the city presentations. I really appreciate this forum. I hope it really makes into a good discussion, and just really making sure we listen to our community and our pilots, and we all want the best for these airports. So working together is really important from my standpoint, and I appreciate all of this. I think we are really listening and making sure that we're doing the best we possibly can. So I wanted to say thank you.
Okay, Dave, I think we're ready for public now. I'm going to let you introduce them because you're promoting them.
Okay. Well, we've heard from Rita already, so we'll take the next three in order: Ben, Walter, and Joni. And so, Ben, fire away. We'll give you 3 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. At the city council meeting the other night, Tuesday night, I guess it was, I had a very nice conversation with Mr. Nappy regarding this very issue. And basically what my ask was, is that they fly 2 miles beyond the shore, then turn downwind, fly south of the marina, and then turn east towards the glide path back to the airport. That would remove them from flying over Oxnard shores. It would avoid the entire noise abatement map. It would also work for aircraft that are trying to stay north of Woolley but aren't experienced enough pilots to make that turn. And it would also work for exiting aircraft. So I think it's a reasonable thing to say, fly 2 minutes beyond the coast or the shoreline or the beach or the surf line or whatever. So hopefully we can make that change. Along a related thing, I do need to respond to Mr. George. I am guilty of being a successful retired real estate broker. I'm also guilty of a lot of years of community service and trying to supply my community neighbors with the best life possible. What we're asking for is to have the same peace and quiet that others have asked for and are receiving. I must caution you all, because I'm hearing this at every meeting, that we all signed a disclosure. Well, the disclosure is a very slippery slope. The disclosure I signed when I purchased my property had to do with the operations of the airport at the time. This airport is not operating in that way, and we are working very hard with all of you and the airport staff to put it into a situation where you can operate the way you need to operate and still have quality of life in our neighborhood. So we have been aggressively emailed, bullied via email, approached at every meeting we go to now, aggressively in person, and now this with Mr. George. My suggestion to all of us is that we calm down the rhetoric. We're open for discussion. We're not now, or have we ever been, in a position to request the closing of the airport. So let's grow up and let's meet each other halfway and figure out how we do this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me reset the clock here. And we were going to go to Walter. So Walter Hagedorn, and you have 3 minutes. Fire away.
Thank you. I was going to talk about that route at the ocean also, and also the vagueness that we have seen the exact same map, and yet all weekend long, all year long, they do not fly those patterns for one reason or another. So the vagueness just encourages that type of activity. And like Ben said, we're not here to close the airport, but let me tell you that if these continue without any type of meaningful regulations, then that will take care of itself, because there's many developers and other people who will have a much bigger interest than we have in taking the airport to court or the county to court. We're just asking right now, let's come to some agreement with and have a little bit more of a precise way in which the pilots can operate. I've been told every time for 2 years, and it always comes down, it's the pilots, we don't have any control. Well, if you don't have any control, then you're not going to have any control of the airport or what happens to it. So that's one comment. The other one is that if you look on, I'd like to see the slide with the other one, that one. If you go down to the bottom of the middle column, it says southbound departures of runway 25 by piston-powered aircraft after attaining 700 feet, turn left. This is in contradiction to what we've asked, but not just what we asked. This is in contradiction of the comprehensive land use plan for Ventura County, which is in effect right now, that was passed in 2000 and which was informed by the 98 report that we just talked about. There they say that you should utilize that runway traffic 25 traffic pattern should utilize the best rate of climb, conditions permitting, turn crosswind, not left or right, but crosswind when reaching the departure end of the runway and an altitude within 300 feet of the pattern altitude, and maintain pattern altitude until turning base leg. When you put left here, that's what they're going to do. That's not fair to us. We've been fighting for right traffic. You should encourage it, and you shouldn't put left there. It's not consistent with the land use plan. It's not consistent with the noise abatement policy, and that should not be in there. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment. And Joni, if you're ready, you have 3 minutes.
I'm ready. One thing that I find is there's a serious visual miscommunication, especially when comparing the Camarillo and Oxnard plans. Camarillo doesn't really fly over any sensitive areas, the touch and go pattern. The touch and go pattern in Oxnard covers a considerable amount of the noise sensitive area. So here's the thing. The noise sensitive area on the map is colored a yellow greenish color, almost like agricultural land. At first glance, a pilot coming to Oxnard may not understand that this area is actually residential, containing homes, schools, and businesses. It should be a color of high visibility and nowhere close to colors of open land on a map. I think that's very misleading. Bright OSHA orange or anything. Maybe if a pilot could see at a glance that the pattern had homes to avoid, they just might avoid flying over them. Secondly, I mean, and we've all touched on this, the extended pattern is arbitrary. And if it means moving the arrow out, if you can't designate a spot, move it all the way out. But we strongly believe that it should be at least 2 miles beyond the shore before they make their turn. Right now, the control tower is instructing touch and go flights to turn at the shoreline. This arbitrary directive has planes turning directly over the beachfront homes or at best 200 feet away. And this is when they're making their turn at full throttle. So we need to be very clear. And I think either a clear visual or a direct interpretation of 2 miles out would be the best way to do it. Now, Mr. Nafty explained previously a little bit about the rollout of the map and how it will be on the website and print, etc. We, the community, highly recommend bringing back the big billboard that used to be at the airport that pilots could see on approach to the runway. You know, the more info, the better chances that pilots will fly friendly. So lastly, I struggle with why this is called noise abatement procedure, because it's much more than noise. It probably should be called an impact abatement, as the negative impact from touch and go pilots that don't follow the pattern cause not only noise, but safety and environmental issues as well. So please make sure that the approved process for pilots to follow is clear, correct, comprehensive, and will promote all to fly friendly in Oxnard. Thank you.
Thank you. And while we were working with those, we have John George, who has raised his hand. And once I get this all squared away, reset.
I'm just gonna
please
refocus everybody, because this is comment period about this item, and I don't want us to get focused on going back and forth on something previously said. So I just want to focus us.
Very good. So on this item 6J, Mr. George.
Hi, everyone. Again, I'd like to talk about a little bit about the pattern and the Life Friendly program. The term well passed is a pretty good selection of terms. And just a little bit about my background. I'm a 36-year airline pilot. I was a military flight instructor in the U.S. Air Force. I'm now a civilian flight instructor and instrument flight instructor. Trying to understand this might be difficult for people who are not pilots. And so I'm going to try and help Mr. Nafy with this terminology a little bit. The pattern that's at Oxnard is primarily a visual traffic pattern, which means that pilots that are flying in the traffic pattern are primarily using visual references to navigate the pattern. On top of that, the tower is basically in control of, gives direction to the airplanes that are in the pattern. By that I mean, and that is when the tower is open, which is typically from about 7 in the morning till 9 p.m. at night. They give the direction to the aircraft on where pattern they want them to fly. So for example, if a pilot flies into Oxnard Airport and wants to do a touch and go, the tower will give this direction on where to turn crosswind, either a right-hand pattern, which would be over the north side and the farmland, or a left-hand pattern, which would be over the south side of the airport along Woolley Road. So when you say well past, what they are telling pilots to do is to visually fly well past before they turn crosswind and then maneuver for the downwind leg. I can honestly say that most airplanes that are flying in that pattern, if they fly well past, they will be at pattern altitude before they come back across the shoreline along Woolley Road. That is my interpretation of why this is a good modification to the pattern. It's not going to be full throttle airplanes, because airplanes, once you level off, reduce their power to a cruise setting, which is a much lower power setting, and that's what they will cross the shoreline at, going back downwind to a base leg. Mr. DiBenedetto was talking about extending the pattern. That does not work, only for the fact that you cannot create a glide path on a downwind and base leg that a pilot can monitor as well as you can as a shorter, closer in downwind leg. And unfortunately, it doesn't work as the way you would think it would. So I would just like to explain that a little bit. I'm more than happy to demonstrate any kind of flying pattern to anyone that wants to come fly in my airplane, to anyone on the commission, any community members. I would love to cooperate with them so that everyone sees what exactly we deal with on a daily basis when we fly an aircraft pattern at Oxnard.
Very good, thank you. And Barb Filkins had her hand raised momentarily. It's down now, so I'm not sure if Barb wants to make a comment or not. It is.
I think I'm still there.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Give you 3 minutes.
I think one thing to remember as we are all pilots is, and this may be one reason why you don't necessarily want to put time in on so many minutes offshore, is that there's also a certain level of safety that has to be maintained. And very often that is what ends up being the pilot in command in the airplane. So I have had conversations with the commissioner of another airport, and that particular, the ownership of the airport, so to speak, wants to avoid some of those prescriptive terms, such as 2 minutes, for the purposes basically of letting the pilots make the safe decision and also not putting the airport on notice if something goes wrong. So I think there's another element here that we have to think about. Susan, this might be off of topic a little bit, but I do have a question to Mr. Benedetto, since he's a real estate agent. I'm looking at the residential resale property disclosure report, and there's 2 items in here. One is the airport noise disclosure, which has to do with the Part 150 study in California Civil Code 110217. The other is the airport influence area disclosure. I think it would be beneficial if there was an explanation by a realtor in that area of the noise disclosures that are made to people buying properties. I think it might help both the advisory and the authority better understand some of the problems. End of quote.
All right, Chair, I think it's back to you.
Okay. So I want to make a few comments. As I recall, these guides were designed to help us better communicate a pattern of flying that would be friendlier. And it's frustrating, and I'm feeling frustrated for the people that put so much time into this, that I just feel like we are rehashing the same argument over and over again. And so my comment is that I think a lot of time and effort has been put into this guide, and I think it ought to go out, and we ought to see if it helps to educate and to communicate what is desired at our airport and what we hope is a friendlier way to fly. And then as Mr. Freitas said, we can revise this as we need to when we see what's not working or what's working, or if we see any trends. But I just feel like we're beating up people that are working hard at every step of the way. And I think there is a real effort to do things better and to fly friendlier. The hiring of the public information that position, all of this is working towards us trying to work better with the community. And I feel like at some point we've kind of got to let that pan out. So those are my comments. I'm seeing a hand up from Alliance Advisory. I don't know who that is. Is that a public comment?
It could be. It could be. Should we try it?
Sure.
And to Ben, we only have 3 minutes to offer you, so I think we're going to have to say that opportunity has passed, but let's see what we get with the Alliance Advisory. 3 minutes. You can come off mute, show your camera if you wish. And state your name. I think we'd want to have the name.
Hi, this is Randall Sonata. I wasn't able to change the name until just now, but I won't take the time to do that. I just wanted to make one quick suggestion, as was mentioned by one of the commenters. The green that we see here could be changed to yellow, and I think that would be a good indicator to pilots that this is an area that is noise sensitive. So that would be my one suggestion for an immediate change or a future change if it's too late to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councilman Perrello, your hand is up.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate all the work that's gone. I appreciate all the comments that have been made to the public. I appreciate the presentation that was made Tuesday night by Mr. Freitas and Mr. Nafty. A tremendous turnout, a lot of questions, a lot of discussion. I did ask the question about the term well past. I believe I got an acceptable answer to that. It may not satisfy very many, but I do feel that I got an acceptable answer. The question has just come up about the color coding. I think there's some validity to that. If we're going to use the same color coding for agricultural land and residential, I think that's a mistake. But 2 points that have been come up with public speakers. I understand there's a little bit of tit for tat, but the question about just exactly what are the real estate disclosures buying near an airport, I think that's something that in the future, everybody that serves on this position as a member of the airport authority ought to know the current rules. And the last part is there was mention of a sign that used to be at the Oxnard airport. I'm not a pilot. I don't fly out of the Oxnard airport. I have a couple of times, but if there is something that's simplistic that could be added that would be beneficial, I'm looking at cost. I mean, God, that can't cost that much to put a sign back up. It may be there now. I don't know if it's factual what was said, but it seems like it's something that deserves an answer. The amount of time and money that has been put into this, I can tell you as a council member from Oxnard, this issue has come to a head when it was exposed, and I do mean exposed, that the complaints were not being logged in as they should have been. This was not the fault of the previous director of the airports or the current director of the airports. This was a decision that was made by someone else and there was no data. And that magnified the issue, and God rest her soul, Ms. Ramirez appointed people on the advisory committee and became a champion of people with views that were concerned about flying over the homes and everything else. And that's what, at least for Oxnard, in my opinion, has generated the tremendous interest in this matter. And those are my comments, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. I don't see any other hands up. I'm scrolling through. I think we have had one suggestion that was seconded to change the coloring. Would anybody like to try a motion?
I'd like to move that we approve the noise abatement maps. If staff can change the color to yellow, I think that's actually a good suggestion. But otherwise, the concept and the layout, I think, is terrific. And my motion is that we approve it.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion. Is the motion clear enough that if we can change the color?
Change the color of the residential areas.
Yes, that was my intent when I can make it clearer. I move that we approve the noise abatement pilot procedure guides and give the Department of Airports the discretion to change the color from green to yellow over the residential areas.
It does help us with the supply chain.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Supervisor Long, I assume you're okay with that as a second?
Yes, as he stated. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, I guess we'll start with a motion from Camarillo.
A roll call, you mean?
I'm sorry, roll call. We do need two separate motions, correct? Yeah, so let's start with Camarillo.
Thank you. So for Camarillo Airport Authority, Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Huber,
Yes.
Mayor Molche,
He may have lost connection.
okay, Chair Santangelo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bear,
Yes.
and that motion passes unanimously 4-0.
Chair Lopez?
Yes, thank you. All right, so for the Oxnard Airport, is there a motion or any further discussion? Councilmember Perrello?
Yes, I'll make a motion that we approve this with the same consideration for the color, but also, since I didn't get an answer, if there's supposed to have been a sign that was there explaining something, that somebody give us an answer, even if it's a yes or no, that included in my motion. I mean, something as simplistic as a sign, we're looking at thousands of dollars for everything. How much could a sign cost? That's my motion.
I second that motion.
Okay, thank you. If we can get a roll call vote and perhaps if there's additional information that can be provided to Councilmember Perrello and shared with the rest of the authority at a later time, we can move forward.
Chair, yeah, we would have to go back to that member of the public. We do have signs on all the entrances into the Oxnard Airport, so that may be what she's referring to that are in place already. She although alluded to a billboard, so I'm not sure. We'd have to get more detail, and we will do that and get back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Freitas. We'll go ahead and take the roll call vote. Are you okay with that, Mr. Perrello?
Yes.
Thank you.
For Oxnard Airport Authority, Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Huber,
Yes.
Councilmember Perrello,
Yes.
Chair Lopez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fussell.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously 5-0.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And the next item on the agenda, we'll go back to item F, and that is the resolution authorizing remote teleconference. Is there any additional information from staff on this before we take any action?
No additional staff information from staff at this point.
Okay, and I don't see any comments. Is that correct?
There are no comments from the public on this item.
Great, thank you. So
I'll
for
move the recommended action.
Thank you, Councilmember Perrello, and I will second that. So can we take a roll call vote, please?
Absolutely.
I'm okay with
For
that.
Oxnard Airport Authority, Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Huber,
Yes.
Councilmember Perrello,
Yes.
Chair Lopez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fussell.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. On to item G. This is a update on the construction schedule for the taxiway connectors A, B, C, D, and E. Is there a staff presentation?
There is Aaron, if you will, for us.
Good evening, Chair Lopez, authority members. We're actually pretty excited to share the wonderful news that the FAA found additional funding to allow us to reconstruct all 5 taxiway connectors at Oxnard Airport. This is a change from the FAA announcement in July, which had informed us that they only had funding for 2 of the 5 connector taxiways, along with FAA power line relocation. And so the original work, based off of that information and the anticipated timeframe for receiving a grant to fund the 2 taxiways, the original construction was anticipated to begin here in September. But we've had to change that to account for the later grant offer, in addition to the fact that the FAA has moratoriums in place in November and December, which impact construction scheduling. And the moratoriums concern the turning on and off of navigational aids for pilots. So that impacts our construction schedule because during this period, the FAA won't allow navigational aids to turn on or off. And most of our work for the construction project is at night, with daily operations resuming in the morning. The other factor for needing to reschedule this is as we started to work with the contractor to line up for September, we realized that there's some long lead items for some of the materials for the project. And so we have now rescheduled the project to align with the grant that we just actually received this week and executed for $8.1 million. And the new schedule for construction is January 2023 through it's estimated the end of April of 2023. And as before, the construction is mainly designed to be accomplished at night to minimize interruptions to airport operations and also to meet FAA construction safety requirements. Additionally, the airport, Dave, if you could go to the next slide. That you can't read this, and I apologize. But this is the flyer that the airport has already or is working to distribute to all tenants to update them on the schedule. We have it also posted on our airport website, and it will go out on our gate notices as pilots enter the airfield. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Powers. Councilmember Perello.
Ms. Powers, thank you very much. It's great to hear this information, but I have two questions that I feel are very pertinent based on what has happened in my city with respect to building materials. Are we able to lock the price, even with the increase of money that we're going to receive? Are we able to lock a price in on some of these building materials? And if so, how long can we lock the price in?
So we actually worked with a contractor. They extended their bid hold date through the end of September. So all their prices are locked in. And we are working currently to execute the construction contract, and they won't be able to increase it even with the changes in material prices.
So, but as long as we get everything finalized before the end of September, we're covered. But if it goes over, what happens then? If we get into October, what happens?
Well, it won't, because our contracts will be in place. We've already received the grant. We have all the authorizations to execute the contract. And so I would anticipate that within the next week, we'll have a signed and executed contract, and the unit prices in the bid are what we will pay and nothing more.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Long?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Perlow. I just really appreciate those questions, and I'm really thankful that the FAA is providing this funding. I think that's a good partnership between our airport and the FAA to do that, and the commitment to our pilots and so forth. So I just want to say thank you, because that would have set us back, and so I really appreciate the funding. Thank you.
We couldn't be in more agreement with you, Supervisor Long. It's pretty exciting, especially after they had sort of set the expectation for some months that funding just wasn't available. So we're thankful that we don't have to repackage and rebid a portion of the project for a third year. So we definitely are happy to move forward, and it will be really beneficial to the airport. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, do we have any public comment or anyone at this time we can welcome that?
Chair, it doesn't look like anybody's in line to speak on this item.
Great. Do we need to take action on this if it was an update?
It's a receive and file item. If you'd like, we can take a roll call vote.
I think we should. This was a great update and very important. So would someone like to make a motion?
I'll motion to receive and file.
Second.
Thank you. All right, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Okay, for Oxnard Airport Authority, Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Huber,
Yes.
Councilmember Perallo,
Yes.
Chair Lopez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fussell.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Powers. And we're on to item 6H, and this is the consideration of the award of a construction for services with Javiation. Is there a staff presentation?
Karen, you want a quick overview?
Yes, my pleasure. So Chair Lopez, authority members, yes, staff tonight is requesting that your authority recommend the Board of Supervisors approve and award a construction administration services contract to Javiation, a Woolpert company, in the not to exceed amount of $716,589, and also authorize the Director of Airports or his designee to execute the subject contract. So I want to just start off with reminding folks that Javiation, it was selected through a request for qualification selection process in December of 2020 as the airport's consultant for a 5-year term. And even with that though, contracts exceeding $200,000 must be approved and awarded by the Board of Supervisors. So that's why we're taking this item before your authority tonight and eventually onto the board for approval. This contract is for construction management services for the taxiway connector Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta and Echo pavement reconstruction at the Oxnard Airport. And the contract includes typical construction administration services such as on-site supervision, inspection, materials testing, record drawings, certified payroll review, stormwater prevention, monitoring, and reporting, as well as there's some additional services that are specific to FAA assurances that we also include in that construction management. In this case, we are asking for authority or your recommendation to enter into a contract with Javiation for a not to exceed amount, because the department actually needs to conclude negotiations with Javiation, but we're working with the FAA on getting final authorizations. And due to the long lead times for some of the construction material items and the submittals that need to be reviewed by Javiation, we need to be able to move rapidly to be able to execute a contract once the FAA gives us their blessing. And so we anticipate that will be in the next week or so, but waiting till mid-October to be able to take the item before the board, we lose a lot of time to have those materials on order in order, to meet construction in early 2023. And that is why we are bringing this item to you tonight. Dave, could you go to the next slide? These are the 5 taxiway connectors, and then there's also an FAA power line that is currently located in an airport storm drain that will be relocated out of that storm drain as part of this project. And one item that I did not mention in the update, that's just word I want to start getting out, and I look forward with working with our new PIO to make sure that we publicize. When we do actually reconstruct all the taxiway connectors, we need to meet FAA design standards. And those design standards are going to require us to rename our taxiways. So instead of having, Alpha through Echo, they're actually going to become Alpha 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we'll need to make sure that, you know, as that transition is going to happen and we complete the project along the way, we'll be making sure to, you know, get out the word to pilots and pilot education to make sure that everyone's aware of the change. And with that, I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you, Ms. Powers. Are there, Councilmember Perrello, go ahead.
Yes, again, I'm not a pilot, so I don't know what Alpha Echo and that means, but I trust that people that are pilots are going to understand. But the question I have, and Ms. Powers, I really appreciate you reading that sentence. Those contracts exceeding 200,000 must be approved and awarded by the board. Are there any issues with this company in past operations or dealings with us that we as board should be aware of?
The construction management company?
Yes.
No. As a matter of fact, they are the same company consultant that oversaw the runway reconstruction at Oxnard Airport, and they did a great job.
Thank you very much, Ms. Powers.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, do we have any public comment?
Chair, we do not have any public members wishing to speak on this item.
Great. Then at this point, we can move forward with any action. What is the pleasure of the authority?
I move that we accept the issue before us and approve it.
I'll second that.
Thank you. A roll call vote, please.
Okay, for Oxnard Airport Authority, Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Huber,
Yes.
Councilmember Perrello,
Yes.
Chair Lopez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fussell.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And on to item 6I, and this is a report on the potential development of 2 aviation parcels at the Oxnard Airport. I'll hand it over to staff.
And Madeline, if you would.
Sure. Good evening, Chair Lopez and authority members. This is a file and receive and file for an update on our solicitation of development bids, which we sent out in April. You may recall Director Freitas discussing the opportunities. We have a 5-acre parcel where the school buses are located adjacent to Aspen Helicopters, and we have a 7-acre parcel that is between Golden West and the current locations of the old hangars 2 and 3. We received a number of proposals and awarded development negotiation rights to 2 different parties. To make things confusing, one of the parties is named Fly 805 LLC, as opposed to Sky 805 LLC, which was the Camarillo entity. And that is made up of Aspen Helicopters and partners, one of which is has an aviation museum in mind. The other entity is a company that Keith is actually knows well, and again,
I could add on to that.
Yeah, you can add to that.
The 7 acres urban air mobility, their focus has been providing facilities, hangar office space for new startup technologies. So that's kind of what they're focusing on and hope to bring to the Oxnard Airport.
Dave, can you flash up the slide of the locations just to remind you of where these are located? The 5 acres is on the lot adjacent to Patterson Road Extension and Aspen Helicopters, and the 7 acres is on the east side down towards Golden West. And then the next slide. We've included some renderings that were provided as part of the solicitation for new hangar development. This is one rendering for the 5 acre, and then the next one is for the 7 acre site. But we anticipate developing, negotiating leases with these developers, and we will be coming back to you with additional information once we get to that point. Any questions?
Mr. Bear, I think I saw your hand first. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
just a quick question. Am I correct that Urban Air Mobility is an eVTOL company, maybe even affiliated with Archer? Is that correct?
That actually is not correct. They're actually MS Construction, a construction company.
Anything else, Mr. Bear?
No, thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Perrello.
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, sitting on this board for a period of time, when the new sites came in at the Camarillo Airport in the east corner of the airport, there was a big issue when the size of the doors or hangar doors and the height of the hangar doors came up. Do we have an idea how big a hangar door is going to be here? And the reason it was an issue there, people were assuming because the hangar door would go up so high, it would allow certain size planes to go in. Do we know that information on this case?
No, this is still preliminary. So they've done some basic site planning, but they have to base their development off of interested parties and tenants who would be leasing from them. So it's a work in progress.
And the
Okay,
only
thank
thing that I would add to that again is the weight capacity of our runways is really the limiting factor, not necessarily how tall or how large of a hangar they build. Our pavements are designed and they have specific limitations. In our case, it's approximately 115,000 pounds at both airports. Very close are the limitations.
So if I heard correctly, both airports are at around the same weight limitation, both airports?
That's correct.
Thank you.
And I do just want to add that we're very excited because we have a serious lack of available hangar space for maintenance and repair operations at both airports and other professional operations that are part of the aviation industry that we just don't have hangar space to accommodate. And pointedly, Aspen Helicopters has a need to move their maintenance operation next to their existing facility. So we're very excited to see that come to pass.
Great, thank you. And would you mind, or Councilmember Perrello, I see your hand again before I go. Go ahead. Wait, you need to unmute.
I apologize, Chair. Will there be any requirements on the part of the city of Oxnard to approve any of this construction permits or anything?
Aaron, you want to take that one? We don't anticipate, if Aaron's not on anymore, but this is county property. So it of course depends on the development and any impacts, but typically developments on county property are run through county planning and county building and safety. Of course, we have agreements for specifically utilities that interface with the city of Oxnard.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Councilmember Perrello. And that was going to be my question, is to get a sense of what is this process like with these developments in terms of who's involved in the process of, but that answered it. So thank you for getting ahead. I don't see any other hands raised from any members. So do we have any public comment?
My bad, I was muted.
I don't have any meat left. I had.
Give me another piece of meat.
All right.
Oh.
We have Ben Benedetto on the panel, and he's ready to take 3 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. This is my last hurrah for this evening. So time to have dinner. I just need more information. I did see something in a packet a couple of days ago when I first downloaded the agenda, and then I have a habit of downloading the agenda just before the meeting because I know things change and move around. And as far as the 5-acre policy with the
Thank you.
805, I saw that they are planning maintenance, repairs, sales of aircraft, and operation of a flight school, including a ground school. And I wanted to know if in that case, Is all of that going to be implemented at the initial phase of operation, or I understand the need for Aspen Helicopter to, have more space and to do the repairs and stuff and operate in the way that they've been operating. I'm not aware if Aspen Air Helicopter operates a flight school or not. So there was that question. And then I couldn't find anything on urban air mobility. And I was really inquisitive about that. The only thing in the packet was this one page with this rendering. So the introduction, I think it was Director Freitas that said that they are, what they do as far as the advanced EV electrical stuff and all of that. So, that's encouraging. I know everything's going that way, but is there any more information available now on this, or how is this going to go? And that's really all I have. So I'm going to close out and let you answer that.
I think I would answer it by the request with the Camarillo Authority that we will get our developers to come to attend these to kind of give their thoughts of what they're planning with their development or their new business. I think that'll be helpful for the authority members.
Keith, if I could just add too, just to answer Mr. DiBenedetto, Aspen Helicopters does provide flight training now. So I think if you go to their website or where to phone the business, they could flesh that out a little bit more for you.
Great, thank you so much. I don't see any other hands or any other comments. And this was also a receive and file unless any further input is needed from staff.
No, we just wanted to keep you updated.
Great, thank you so much.
Move to receive and file.
Thank you, Councilmember Perello. I will second that. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Oxnard Airport Authority, Supervisor Long.
Yes.
Supervisor Huber.
Yes.
Councilmember Perello.
Yes.
Chair Lopez.
Yes.
Vice Chair Fussell.
Sorry, we'll unmute you, Dr. Fussell. 1 moment.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I was muted. I'm sorry.
We got it. That motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the director's report. Mr. Freitas.
All right, let me roll through it as quickly as I can. Update with the private hangars for Camarillo and Oxnard. We met with Cahoda's leadership in August, and we've got a group of about 7 board members and a few others that have agreed to kind of be our first test to do hangar inspections and get through the changeover to the new hangar rental agreement. So we're about to start that in September and kick that off again. As we talked about, we got 220 members to go through. We'll expect that will take us all the way through middle of next year. Unleaded fuel. The FAA, you've heard this brought up. Aviation has had lead in it for a long time. September 1st, after more than a decade, the FAA has approved GAMI fuel. There was already another version of SWIFT that has unleaded fuel. And so we expect the progress and the migration from leaded aviation fuel to non-leaded fuel. There'll be some time. Obviously, we've got to get this through the United States, transportation issues and all of those things, but that is approved. And now it's just getting it through the system and changing that out. Our security camera systems, both airports, working with our vendor, continue and expecting that will be the systems for both airports will be in place sometime the end of the year. Noise, we've talked a lot about that, heard a lot from the community. Our new PIO, as you met earlier, is in place. We have a kickoff fly friendly program next Tuesday at the Oxnard Airport. We've invited 35 flight schools in the LA Basin to come talk to us about noise, pass out the information that we have and what we're looking for them to do. That's again just the beginning, just the start to really push that out to those pilots and flight schools that use our airports. You heard the news about the Part 150 noise study that's coming in place. And that's all I have for the noise items. The Wings Over Camarillo Air Show at Camarillo Airport, successful once again, August 20th, 21st. Last year, they had a record attendance at 16,000 people. They broke that record again this year and had 20,000 attendees. Cloud9 project continues to progress at Camarillo. Again, still looking at probably the second quarter of 23 to open their doors. Here's a most recent photograph of the 4 hangars. And then we move to the Coulson fire helicopter based at Camarillo, but also spent some time last month at Oxnard Airport. Again, this was paid for by the local power company to be in place to protect Contra Costa County for basically it came in July, and we expect it to be at one of our 2 airports through the end of the year. The last 2 items, we do want to recognize the Experimental Aircraft Association, chapter 723, based at Camarillo Airport. They have been recognized for 30 consecutive years of the Young Eagles program, where pilots donate their time, their airplane, and fly for free kids age between 8 and 17. And as a matter of fact, we are talking, I just had a discussion with an EAA member from Oxnard Airport who is looking to restart that at the Oxnard Airport this year as well. And then lastly, just want to point out the airports department is working with the CEO's office, the county general services agency, and Oxnard Airport was selected as a site to install 3 electric vehicle charging stations. Another one of the SCE programs for the installation. And that's all that I have for you. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Freitas. Are there any questions from authority members? All right. You're off the hook.
Tired.
All right. Well, thank you for that information. Definitely a lot going on and really great updates. So thank you all. We'll move on to the next item, and this is the reports. Are there any questions or comments on this month's reports? And any public comment? Okay, on to item 9, correspondence. Any questions or comments from authority members or the public? Okay, item 10, authority comments. Any members who have any comments to share? Councilmember Perello.
Thank you. I appreciate the meeting tonight. I appreciate the questions and the dialogue back and forth. I also appreciate the fact that we've allowed, in recognition, Sarah Wan and all the good works that she did, including teaching Supervisor Carmen Ramirez a lot of the issues about the environmental. It was mentioned about the people flying, teaching young kids how to fly. If you look at today's star, there's a picture of a gentleman in the front, Mr. Buddy Gibson. I've been able to be involved with this gentleman with respect to the group that flies out of the Bethel AME Church with the basically Tuskegee Airmen and taking young kids. And they do that. And it's a tremendous story. It's a little bit of history in a case of facts and evidence matter. But that's my personal comments on that. As a city councilman in Oxnard, I want to thank Mr. Freitas and his assistant, Mr. Nafty, for coming to our city council and making a presentation. I apologize that there were some technical difficulties. I've been assured today that all the technical difficulties have been addressed, and the tape and the revisiting of that meeting is 100% up to snuff. It was a pleasure after all these years to have a presentation by the Airport Authority in Oxnard, and I hope in the future that we can have some of our meetings, since we're a joint use Camarillo Oxnard, once in a great while, make the trip to Oxnard and have your show out of Oxnard. I appreciate the presentation that was made. I appreciate the dialogue. I appreciate the points that Mr. Nafty had brought up. One of them, which I had asked him specifically, the length of the runways, the differences, and he explained it, 50 feet, but the difference is the weight that can be carried in the runways. I thought he did a great job. And both of you, thank you very much for coming to Oxnard. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Councilmember Perrello. Supervisor Long.
Yes, thank you very much. I wanted to make sure everyone was aware that there was a great presentation this morning at 7:30 from Mr. Freitas and about the airport and how great the airport is, what we're working on, and also the opportunities to work with the cities and the college districts, the Navy base in regards to building a workforce for our community. And I just wanted to appreciate their time and efforts there. Also with the city of Camarillo and city of Oxnard, the presentations to really collaborate and make our airports as robust as possible, and also ensure that the community is linked into what's going on. There was a shared concern in regards to noise. There was some airplanes that were flying last week or so, and really appreciate the opportunity to talk about that and to share the information with our community. I think it was a good teamwork, and wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Long, and I will definitely, I agree with you. It's really great to see the presence of the airport and the department throughout the community, and being a partner with our cities, even if it's just Oxnard and Camarillo who have airports under jurisdiction. So, but it's great to build those relationships and have that line of communication throughout the community. So thank you for all your work and efforts, especially as the late meeting on Tuesday and an early day today. So with that, if there are no other comments or any addition from authority members, again, we are adjourning today in memory of Supervisor Carmen Ramirez and Ms. Sarah Wan, two great women who leave an incredible impact in our community. And we will keep them in great memory for their presence and leadership. And with that, we will see you all on October 13th, location to be determined. Thank you.
Good night, all.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Take care.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah, Eugene.